Welcome back to the House of Legends. Today, I do have the privilege, the honor to get to share this virtual room with Kristen Stuart. She's a mentor, a guide, a teacher. She's here to help us not only to step into this amazing leader that we are, but she's also creating a new paradigm. And I think it's a new paradigm where we get to not only embody who we really are, but also bring in the light, the gifts that we all have within ourselves. Kristen, if you can introduce yourself, let us know who you are and what got you to where you are right now.
Hello, thank you. And it's an honor to be here. So I am based in the Canadian Rockies, and this has been home for over 20 years. And my path into where I am now as a spiritual mentor, business oracle for high-performing leaders, and really standing in walking women into a new paradigm of leadership, divine embodiment, and awakening and activating the sacred gifts within. It starts, I feel, really when I stepped on a yoga mat 22 years ago. And it was that feeling of I was working as a personal trainer, and coming into yoga was a natural step for me. And I stepped on that yoga mat thinking I was going to have this incredible physical practice.
Yes.
And then something else happened. And for those who have been on the yogic path, this is something I often hear as well. And it was like I tapped into something deeper within me. I tapped into a level of higher consciousness. And then I knew this was something I wanted to share with others. And so I pursued the path as a yoga teacher. I actually worked for a while as a personal trainer, yoga meditation teacher, and international hiking guide. So I desired to master the body, master the mind. And over the course of time, through various experiences, a pivotal one was when I was in the Sacred Valley of Peru for the first time in 2011, and my sacred gifts opened to another level, and I started to read the Akashic Records, and it was like I was tapping into a higher realm of awareness, and this continued to deepen and expand, actually deepen and expand, to the point where I really saw how, as women, we are here as sacred channels. We've got higher dimensional gifts. We are multidimensional in nature. We are human, and we are living this human expression as divinity. And so, walking women home to the embodiment of this, to the embracing of this, as we birth forth a new paradigm in leadership that is rooted in energetics and frequency, divine feminine embodiment, and really bringing back the power of the feminine that has been missing from the planet. And I often say bringing back the power of the feminine in her original blueprint, her divine blueprint and original truth.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. And while you were sharing about the fitness background, also yoga, I can definitely relate with that because one of actually part of my awakening, and I think you will resonate with this as well, is when instead of just being on the mind, we get back to the body as well. I think many of us we are awakening when we start combining that as when we're going back to our bodies, and instead of, well, we have the physical transformation, but when it goes way deeper, because one of the things that I would love, of course, if you can share as well, what was that moment for you, was an emotion that was moving through the movements? Because I know yoga is looks so easy. When I did my first class, it was like I just saw stretches. It was not. It was
No,
really not.
yeah. And so the way that I felt in yoga and dropped in deeper and see it, and I see it, and the way that I taught it was also, a lot of people said you teach quite differently than other people. I mean, we all have our unique flavor. But I saw yoga as a way of moving light through our body. So starting to understand the subtle body, the channels, the nadis they're known as, and the different meridians. And what we're doing is we're moving light through the body, igniting and activating and bringing our physical form into a state of greater balance and activation. like polishing up the inner diamond as we get everything moving with life force again, and life force energy, prana. And so feeling that aliveness and feeling how this affected the energy centers, the chakra system, and starting to explore higher consciousness and yoga as a pathway to higher consciousness. And the practice of yoga in the West really started to, the physicality of it is something that I feel was taken, and there was not a bringing forth of the full richness of it. The physical poses or postures, the asanas, were actually created to bring the body into a greater state of balance in all of its systems, from, physical or nervous system, circulatory, the endocrine system, and then physically to unlock the body so that it could take a more comfortable seat to be in meditation, to then go into the next levels of the work, essentially.
That is so amazing the way that you explain it. And I think all comes back to balance. When we start I think either working on the mind and then in the body, we start opening new, like I said, new doors. And I would love to know when you start you saw the first of all the benefits within yourself, and you start to teach to other people. When was that moment when you decide to transcend and to teach the things that you are now teaching to leaders to in this, I will say, in this more extensive space? And I'm not saying that back then it wasn't, but right
Sure.
now I think you, like we mentioned before, we are apporting to create this new paradigm.
Yes, yes. And I offer something very different now in my work. And the the expansion of that, or the next level of that, came through a devotion to the practice of meditation and exploring and accessing higher consciousness. And then what I would receive, the downloads I would receive, the prompts I would receive. And I would say that there was a very pivotal moment in my life that occurred in 2012. And I'd just come back from my first journey to the Sacred Valley of Peru. I was there with my yoga teacher, mentor at the time. I had and experienced literally a physical awakening, a Kundalini awakening experience, which took me into a state of oneness, a
Mhm.
full merging with the field, a full merging with God, a full merging into union, which is what the spiritual practices are designed and created to support us in. And so in this experience, I remember literally becoming part of all. And it was like I was moving as one, literally one with the universe. The expansion in my heart, the love that flooded me, the love of the divine that flooded my body, was a feeling I had never experienced before. And it was so profound. And
Mhm.
I knew that I had unlocked something within me. I had opened something within me, and I was being initiated into a next level in my leadership, in the work and the mission that I was here for. And the irony is there was this big awakening and opening, and my gifts came online in a whole other way. And then my human had to navigate what was a surging of life force and energy, the awakening of the Kundalini within my body. And that was a very difficult journey. And that was 2012 for me.
2012. Well, you were sharing. I was imagining this beautiful, like you said, immersion with the universe, just feeling that love, that sense
Mm.
of everything is just connected. And while you mentioned in this that it's pure energy and it feels so good, going back to the human part, going back to our body catching up with that, how you
Yes,
were able to navigate that? Because sometimes we receive the downloads, we receive the ideas, we feel really good, but the body is like, what's going on? Like,
right.
how you were able to navigate those changes without, I would say, without self-sabotaging, because sometimes we feel like this is not right for us because the body is just simply not responding, or it's too much, or we feel tired. And it's another way. I found for myself that it was a way of my body, a mechanism to trying to catch up with the new downloads, I would say.
Yeah, and my navigation through that was one of self-sabotage. And so it was the beginning of, a lot of people refer to it as the dark night of the soul journey, yet ultimately what it is the light night of the soul, because that is what is coming on the other side. But the body had experienced this super, super high frequency light flooding it and pouring in. And so any aspect within me and consciousness that was carrying a frequency that wasn't in a match, that was carrying a dense frequency, came flying to the surface. Plus, I had created a perfect storm because I came back from Peru to open a yoga studio called Sacred Roots. And I came back so high on this energy and this frequency. And I did have I have a high output, and that high achiever desire within me and passion and fire, right? My background was as a mountain climber, ice climber. So that energy coupled with like my passion, my fire, basically what happened was I launched a business which created a lot of stress. And so I was spiking into anxiety and stress with the business while I'm also having this very real experience. And I wasn't aware of what was actually going on. I felt superhuman for a while. I used those words. Like, how is it possible that I am doing so much right now? Because I was flying on this flooding of energy in my system, but my nervous system was not prepared for that.
Mm.
So within 7 months, the studio was closed. I was on the floor in full depletion, and my my mind, my body started to spiral. So I had no energy left. I had stopped sleeping 2 months prior to this happening. And so, of course, without sleep, we're not healing. And basically, I wound up in a state of extreme anxiety, like an anxiety, manic anxiety, depressive disorders that ultimately led me into a state of suicidal psychosis. So that was the depth that I went to.
Whoa. While you were sharing that, I just felt the chills, and even I do have this. It's pretty cozy because, well, I haven't lived that same experience, but when it comes to nervous system and receiving new things and catching up, I went through some kind of experience like that where the body is just simply not responding. I would
Mhm.
love to know from that place when after 7 months the studio is closed, uh, you find yourself in this deepness of feeling anxious, feeling that way, how you were able to move from that. What was the first thought? Because there's always a point when we reemerge, I would say.
Right. Right. It was, I was very good at moving, right? I was very physical in my life, physically active. And so the message had to get loud enough for me to slow down.
Yeah.
So you have no energy. You literally can't function. And so it began a devoted path to a meditation practice. That's when meditation became my priority in my life. I'd been teaching yoga for, a number of years already. However, I prioritized the stillness. I had to learn a new way of being because clearly the way I had been operating was not working. And so I this I basically would lay on my mat and listen to guided meditation to start to bring me into a place of presence, or work towards presence and work towards healing my nervous system. I devoured whatever information I could find on healing, about my healing my adrenal glands, understanding what was going on for me and how to optimize through nutrition and supplementation, like all of the different tools I could find to help get me back online again and operating in fuller vitality and presence. And so there were so many different moments,
Yeah.
but the biggest piece of it all, right? We can heal and restore our physical body, our support our minds, all of this. But the key part of this was recognizing that I needed to cultivate a practice of self-love.
Mm.
Stage one, I call stage one of the awakening journey self-love. It's coming home to that because I recognized that a lot of my affirmation, a lot of my sense of self was coming from what I was doing, because I was very good at doing and achieving. And so I was, I was pushing, I was living in that very masculine way of operating, driving, pushing, ignoring my feelings, literally disregarding my feelings, noticing that I wasn't sleeping well, I was feeling stressed, I wasn't making good business decisions before things started to really go downhill. Yet I was still pushing through. I wasn't talking about it. I wasn't opening up and sharing what was actually going on. I was shoving it down, trying to stay strong, because that's what I thought I needed to be, and push through it all, when what needed to happen was slow down and learn how to be. And
Mm.
so this was a key part of it. I was grateful that I'd been exposed to teachings around light, around frequency, energetics, vibration through yoga. And so I was aware of the experience of feeling more expanded in our field, more expansive through the heart, the portal of the heart, as this space where we're cultivating and expanding our light, our joy, our love from. And so my work began falling in love with myself.
Mm.
That's how it began. And to see the beauty I already was, to see the divinity versus the voices in my head, because as things were starting to decline, I was still fighting it. It was like, you should be stronger. You should be able to do this and handle this. You've done hard things. You've done incredible climbs in the mountains. And I had a very negative voice in my head. And I recognized that that negative voice had been operating for most of my life.
Mm.
The voice of not enoughness.
You mentioned some really, really important things that I would love to highlight. The first one, when you said about I did have to recognize that the way that I was operating, it was not working. For high achievers, for women that we make things happen, sometimes we don't want to slow down. We don't want to just take a look because we've been pushing and it has been working at one extent or another. I would love to know, when you arrived to that point, how you felt in your body. What was the first thing by you saying, you know what, this is not working, I'm gonna do another way? And what was the first, aside of the meditation, what was the another thing that you start to implement in your daily basis? Because sometimes we discover something and we want to apply everything, but it's as the same, as our nervous system is not gonna catch up with everything.
Right. Yeah, it started with literally I call it it's like a gratitude practice. It was observing, literally observing three things of beauty a day, because my heart was in such a contracted state. My energy field was collapsed. And so there wasn't a lot. Like my mind, my lens of perception was so dark and so negative. And I knew I needed to tap into light in some way to start to expand my heart's electromagnetic field again. Because to me, it felt like I was suffocating. I was being smothered by just this heaviness and this darkness. And so I started to make a daily practice for myself of consciously observing three things of beauty that I could be grateful for. And there were days when it all I could pull through was the sun rose today.
Ah.
I was able to get out of bed today. And then I'm blessed to have support around me that are helping me on this journey. I'm not navigating this alone. And that was one of the greatest teachings out of it, was the power of vulnerability. That vulnerability is actually a superpower, and that as soon as I started to share, my fears, I was swallowing my fears versus saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now, and allowing that energy to be expressed and to be shared. And so all of it really started to, like, these practices, allowing myself to be supported and to be very vulnerable about what was going on for me. I felt so much shame, and I had to do a lot of work, inner work, to move through that. But as I literally daily would focus on three things to be grateful for, three things that I knew would expand my heart and start to support my heart's field, to bring a state of coherence between my mind and my heart, my brain and my heart again. I could feel,
Yeah.
like, I started to feel lighter, right? You feel a little more buoyant. It took a while, for sure, but it also was supported by my mentor at the time. My yoga teacher mentor came to visit me. I had checked myself into the hospital to sleep, and she came to visit. It was the day that I got out. I thought I was going into sleep for a night, and I was in there on suicide watch for 5 days, actually. And this was before the studio actually closed. And I came out, and I will never forget this. Like, this seed planted the awareness of what's possible in me. And we went down by the river here in my mountain community in the Canadian Rockies. We were down by the river, and I basically sat almost like I was in her arms, like a mother would like hold a child, and I sat with her, and she prayed into me. She prayed Christ consciousness into me. She prayed love into me. And during that experience, and I have chills as I'm speaking this right now, during that, I felt myself come alive again, because she was channeling light into me. She was bringing through the voice of God, the voice of Christ consciousness, the voice of love that I didn't have for myself yet. And as she spoke that into my energy field and into me, I remember looking at my body, because it felt so different. I had energy. I could feel this expansion. I could feel my heart again. I felt like I could breathe. And in that moment, it planted the seed of hope that I could feel this. I
This
couldn't hold it on my own, but I could feel this.
this is so strong. I mean, wow, wow. And I have to say it here, Kristen, because when I see you online, I just see just pure light. I, I didn't have any idea of what you were sharing. I mean, from this conversation, I was just like, and when you share this those moments, and like you mentioned, vulnerable moments, is when actually we realize that we're not the only ones. There's so many people who, I mean, feeling or experiencing things behind the scenes that we don't get to see. And this is leading me also to this point as well, where you mentioned something that I really deeply resonate with this. Sometimes we feel good, or we attach or sense of I'm worthy, I feel good about what is in the bank account, how many clients, how I look, until that is removed, and we we just sit down with ourselves, and right there is when we must to go deep in order to find ourselves again. I would love if you can extend more, how was your experience there, because you mentioned self-love in a different way. When we see in social media, it's like a buzzword, like baths and buy yourself flowers. Is not that at all.
No, it's the embodiment of our divinity. That's how I see it, right? And that's where I needed to be able to source that from within myself, and cultivate, the most intimate relationship we will ever have in our life is the one with ourselves, the one with our soul, and letting this be developed, where it's like I get to fall in love with myself now. And for me, I didn't come into my life. So I was 37 at this time. I'm 49 now. So 12 years ago, I was going for my big dream, and my greatest fear was failure.
Mm.
And so it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I got to fail through my lens of perception, yet what we all know is this was the ultimate gift to bring me into right relation and right alignment with the life that I was here to create for myself, that was filled and overflowing from this place of self-sourced love, self-sourced light. And that became the focus initially, was to build this relationship. It's like an indomitable relationship with myself. No matter what comes my way in life, I know I've got this. And, there's forgiveness of what has
Yeah.
happened, right? And I do feel it's relevant to share here. Underneath everything, I also have a trauma story that I had not healed. And so that trauma story started to come up. And that trauma story was when I felt like I was stripped of my power. I lost my power. I lost my voice, and I didn't advocate for myself. And so it was sexual trauma, sexual assault that was just devastated me. And I thought I had to be stronger than that story and just put it aside and keep going. Yet it locked inside of me and started to, as it does, it started to compound internally. And eventually this part of me needed to be faced in order to be healed, so I could release that and reclaim my power.
I have to mention this, and thank you for sharing this part specifically, because while you were sharing that, and images from, I don't know, when I was 4 or 5 came through. Some people know, many people don't know this part of the background story, experiences, you name it. I went through a similar situation. I know I was like 4 or 5. It was with an uncle, and for the longest, I was just giving, like you said, my power away. And I think those moments are really painful because
Mhm.
who wants to remind that? Who wants to just bring to the surface? But surface. I would love if you can share how you were able to move from that, how you were able to forgive.
It's been a journey. It's been a journey, absolutely. And because there was just so much shame, I felt like it was my fault. And there was a lot of shame and guilt I held around this, yet it was actually my employer, and he broke into my room. Like it was complete violation. And the healing journey, it took a long time. There was even residue up until recently that was still part of this story that I hadn't completely moved through me. But it was forgiveness. And what really helped me come to this point of a full letting go and a full reclamation of my power, a reclamation that I'm safe to
Mhm.
be, and also safe to be feminine and to be beautiful, because I felt like I had to shut that down, and I had to shut down my feminine essence, because being a woman was not safe. That's how it felt to me. Being beautiful was not safe. Like all of these pieces of it. The forgiveness was big. It was forgiving myself. And that was the biggest forgiveness, more so than forgiving him. It was forgiving me, because I thought I had done something wrong. Because this man was married, he had a beautiful young wife and beautiful newborn children, or child and toddler. And the guilt I felt for her. And it was like, because
Mm.
I I lost my voice and I couldn't scream, and I couldn't stop what was happening. So the healing around the forgiveness was really letting it go. I had to let go of what I was carrying, this burden, this heaviness, this guilt and this shame for something that was not my fault.
Beautiful. You
Mhm.
mentioned something. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's just you're speaking directly to my soul. And
Mhm.
I think the listeners will enjoy this podcast soon. But I think this conversation, it was for me right now, and I have to share it here instead of like waiting until we wrapped the podcast. Uh, I do have a question here as well, because you mentioned something that I just clicked for me, and I know I was aware, even I closed my eyes here, how you were able to feel safe feel safe again 110%?
I had to decide
Mm,
that I got to be safe. You may have, yeah, I have full chills. That's landing. So, because that story, I could have lived in that story, which would have me never feeling safe with the masculine, would have me potentially staying in the story of blaming the masculine. All of the ways that
we
it
can.
impacts us. And I decided I get to be safe, and I'm the one that brings my safety. And I'm the one responsible for my healing and for restoring my nervous system and for standing in my power with boundaries and speaking my truth.
Mm,
And I didn't do that then. I wasn't in my power then. I didn't know how to be in my power then. Right. And that really helped me. It's like, just as I get to bring my belonging, I get to bring my safety, and I'm the one that decides, and I'm the one that decides what feels good for me and what does not. And the environments I'll put myself in, and if someone is speaking or acting in a way that does not feel good to me, whereas before I would stay silent, now I express it.
mm,
And this person, I'll leave the situation, I'll leave the environment, I'll have a conversation. I won't tolerate anyone in my orbit or myself in anyone's orbit that does not hold the highest sanctity for who I am, for the feminine and the masculine, right?
mm.
And to to continue, these are the conversations. And when we start to talk about this more and bring it into our spaces and places, we are the ones that are creating a new paradigm of safety for the feminine, because the patriarchal paradigm was what caused this imbalance and a lot of the distortion that we are here correcting at this time of awakening on the planet right now.
This is so powerful. You have no idea how I feel right now. Oh, I just feel like something right here on my heart. Like I just I just felt every single. I'm not even call it word. I just felt how the vibration of those words just were penetrating me. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. I have no even words to describe how I feel, because sometimes, like you said, it's a continuation of the healing. Sometimes we think that it's just already set, we already went through that, but sometimes it's just some, I call it crumbles that
Yes. Yeah,
still.
crumbs. It's like residue, a little bit of residue that's still there that we get to clear all of it. And that's the time we're living in right now. When we see the words awakening and ascension, what we're doing is we're purifying consciousness, which requires us going inside, and liberating ourselves and reclaiming our full power and reclaiming our full light. And we were born as pure God light, pure source light. This is who we are as a soul, an expression of the divine, an expression, a fractal of source. We were born worthy. We were born with everything within us to create an exquisite and incredible life. However, what we were also born with is the density of consciousness that has compounded over the course of thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. And that consciousness is interfering in the field. And so we haven't realized that what we've been living under the illusion. It's like the veils have been over top of us. And now we're recognizing that we are these powerful channels of light, pillars of light, to support the planet, to support higher consciousness. And those parts of us that we hid away, that we dimmed down, that we played small, those parts of us where we felt like we lost our power, it's all an invitation for us to reclaim it. And it does require that deep inner journey to cleanse and clear any and all ways we thought there was something wrong, any and all ways we gave our power away, power over to money, power over to someone outside of ourselves, right? Which was the patriarchal model, is that, you know, your power was given over to something outside of you, when the only truth is we are the pure expression of God power through us as us.
Yes, that's so, so deep. And I think when we look back and on our personal journey as well, we went through all those purifications, or those, I don't know if I using the right word here, challenges, or in order to become those the teachers that now can help other people. Because you mentioned this, we were mentioning this word as well, embodiment. We have to be the embodiment of the word that we're doing here, because there's so many people saying the right words, but something is not clicking. And when it comes that way, it's because they're just learning from someone else. But when we learn from experiences, when we have the codes that we can actually share with other people.
Yes. And that's what we're doing, is we're having the experience to liberate our truth, to liberate our soul codes, our divine blueprint. And to be so embodied is to navigate what the journey
Yeah.
has been, right? And many right now are in those initial stages of awakening. 2012 was considered the last big wave. 2020 was the next one. And it's going to ultimately, it's actually going to intensify energetically, because ever higher frequencies of light are pouring in to support the elevation, the expansion of consciousness.
Mhm.
And what we're doing is we're remembering, like the
Yeah.
divine feminine in her rising. We're remembering our way back to the beginning, is what I like to say, before this distortion and in consciousness took hold, and humanity fell in consciousness ultimately. So we're remembering the beginning, remembering our divine self, remembering our divine truth, and that we are here now to liberate this light. And along the way, we get to be of the highest service for the world, you know, first to ourselves, for one another, for the world, because it all is connected. And make beautiful, abundant, you know, build abundant businesses, build multi-generational wealth, leave a legacy of wealth and light, and perhaps be the first in our lineage to do so. Because I work primarily with women, and you know, the generation we are the ones that are living in a time where we didn't need to have someone co-sign, a male to co-sign a loan for us, or co-sign for a credit card. Like, you know, these leaps have been amazing. However, I often say the feminist movement brought some progress, yet what it did was created a lot more distortion too, because women began disguising themselves in that masculine mode of operating versus embodying the feminine essence within. And it's that feminine essence in balance in our each of our own expressions, right? We all have an inner masculine and feminine, and we find our right balance that supports us. And this is where we are. And this is through us, we bring through the unity consciousness.
Yeah, all comes back to balance. And like I love so much the way that you mentioned coming back home. Because either as you mentioned, with the liberation of the woman, sometimes and I put myself back then, we go into the masculine, that I can do it all. I have my own money. I don't need help and I was forgiven this huge part of the feminine, of being the receiver, of being this. I was shooting that part of me. And at the final of the day is when the imbalance was coming. I was attracting partners that were mimicking the feminine. It was just a disaster right there.
Right.
And
Yeah.
even with the business, I was just trying, just like doing all my things, or hustling thing, in the hustle mode, burning myself down until I decide, like, just to stop that and start working on myself. But like you said, all comes back to recognizing and going back home, going back to the wholeness that who we are.
Absolutely. And it is, it's coming home to the truth within. And I call home heaven on Mother Earth, and we're here to bring this through us.
This is so incredible, Kristen. Before we wrap up our podcast, that by the way, this was more like, I don't even call it podcast. Have no idea how powerful was that part of the conversation for my soul. I don't even for my human, for my soul. And I'm really grateful for that. I would love to ask you, I'm going to ask you a question that I always ask my guests, but before that, if you can share where we can find you, what is the best way if, when people, most of my clients, the people that get to listen to this podcast are high achievers, are women that are making things happen. If
Yes.
want to know more, if they feel like, hey, I, I want to feel the same way that Graciela felt, because I
Yes.
just felt really connected. Um, how they can find you, Facebook, Instagram, what is the best way?
Absolutely. Yeah, the best place is on Instagram and Facebook. So I'm under my name, Kristen Stewart, @_Kristen Stewart on Instagram. And it's KristenStuart. And the same on Facebook. Those are the best ways to connect and, reach out, say hello, let me know if this podcast has brought something through for you, and share all the love on it. It is such an honor to be here and to be able to have these conversations that bring forth so much for all of us together.
I'm really grateful for you, Kristen. And here's the question before we wrap up. What is, and by this point I already know, but what is your superpower?
My divinity is what I would say. My divinity.
I'm totally agree. I'm totally agree. And another thing that I would love to add, and it's part of the divinity as well, is that you make people feel so good in your presence, your energy, the way that you're playing, the way that it's like having having the most beautiful, harmonious music in your ear. Have to say.
Thank you. That is, I'm receiving. That's deeply beautiful. This is my intention. I am here to be a pillar of light. And
And
so I hold myself to the highest standards to be that, to be the highest frequency I can be, and to keep channeling this through me into the field and helping and walking with others on this path of reclamation, on this path of activation, and that we are here to truly create something that has never happened before on the planet.
indeed. I while you were sharing that, mentioned the word channel, and when you said when I'm channel things, this came and I'm not gonna hold it. I will love, and I never do this. I would love to ask you what is one thing that I need to listen today. I don't know why it's gonna be in the recording. I'm not gonna edit this part, but it just felt right to ask you that.
Yeah, and what I see and feel with you, it's a lot within the heart space. There's just a vibration. My body gives feedback. It's my body gives me the information, and then the transmission comes through, and it's like this sense of complete surrender into the the divine expression you are, and allow yourself
Mm.
to fully receive the infinite love that you are here to remember.
Oh, so good.
We could go on forever because I could easily start to transmit from the field and the records what's the history of your soul from the beginning of time in the Akasha. Yet ultimately, what I will say for you, for everyone, is we are being summoned into our highest timeline of truth. We are being called home to our soul truth. And it's a liberated truth. It's a recognition that we're remembering who we are. And we're releasing any and all ways we've had resistance. We've armored up perhaps with protection because of what life has brought us so far. Yet right now is the most incredible opportunity to come into this surrender and let yourself be the vessel. We're all channels. We
Mm.
literally are all channels. We're just in different frequencies of connection. It's not a hierarchical thing whatsoever. It's simply at different stages of the path and on the journey. And as we allow more light to move through us, and we allow this to be expressed and to come into deeper listening, to trust our own channel, to trust in our own channel with source and God, that what is streaming through us is for us, and that through us and for us is for the planet. And the heart has got to be able to feel fully.
Mm.
So we want to open the heart, blast this light, get out there, and it's not love and light our way. It's allow ourselves to feel what we feel, and then know that we have the power to create a new reality at every choice point.
That is so, so powerful, Kristen. Thank you so much. And I have to say it here before before we stop the recording. You mentioned, and you are incredible. You mentioned two words that when I did my Akashic Records, like surrender and allow. I was just mind blowing. I have to hold it.
Yes, and that's what I feel, because there can be this resistance internally. It's like I feel literally there is this energy in me that feels like it wants to burst, because it's like let it come out. Let all of you be seen, be heard, be celebrated, and allow the full expression of who you are to come out now.
Kristen, you are a gift. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It is an honor, and I'm so, so grateful.
Thank you so much for all the listeners, and we'll see you next week.